All right, good afternoon, everybody. Today is Monday, November the 25th. Welcome to the special calling of the MLGW budget hearing. Appreciate everybody taking the time to be here. Ashley, would you please call the roll?
Everybody.
Councilwoman Cooper Sutton.
Present.
Councilwoman Logan. Who's present online?
Yeah, I believe Councilwoman Logan is present online.
Present.
There she goes.
Thank you. Councilwoman Walker.
Present.
And Chairman Spinoza.
Present. All right, thank you, Ashley. So for the record, I'm just going to read a couple of communications that we sent out before we get going. So this was an email that we sent on 11/18. This has been available to the public, but I'm just going to read it as is for the record. It says, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water Committee Chairman Philip Spinoza Jr. and Vice Chairwoman Pearl Walker invite the public to attend the upcoming MLGW budget hearing on Monday, November the 25th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. in the City Council Committee Room, located at 125 North Main Street on the 5th floor. During this hearing, MLGW President Doug McGowan will present the 2025 proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year, offering insight into financial priorities, ongoing projects and planned improvements, such as the infrastructure replacement plans and grid modernization plan that will yield benefits and reliability and grid resilience for decades to come. The total operating and capital budget for 2025 is $2.5 billion. Almost $1.3 billion, or approximately 63.18% of operating expenses, is budgeted for purchase power and gas costs. MLGW's budgeted operations and maintenance expenses for FY25 total $586 million, while MLGW's capital program totals $382.4 million. MLGW's payment in lieu of taxes to local governments are projected to be $76.7 million. Then we provide the link for live streaming, and we also got copies of the proposed budget book attached in the email, which I think we got copies of that maybe the week before. And then lastly, just for the record today, Ashley was kind and sent an email on my behalf right at noon. Just wanted to read this for the record. It says, MLGW Chairman Spinoza and Vice Chairwoman Walker are looking forward to seeing you at today's 2025 budget hearing scheduled for 3 p.m. in the committee room. President McGowan will begin the hearing by presenting the proposed budget. Chairman Spinoza kindly requests that all members hold their questions until the conclusion of the presentation. Attached, you'll find the provided presentation and the budget book. Printed copies of the presentations will be available at the meeting, but please be sure to bring the budget book they provided. We look forward to seeing you all soon. So just wanted to lay the groundwork for the millions of people watching around the world. But thank you, President McGowan, for being here, and to all the council members. And if you show up online, let us know. And I know a couple other council members are planning to be here. So with that, I'll be quiet. President McGowan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, council members, for taking the time to be here. Realize this is an important budget for you all to review, much like you do with the City of Memphis budget, having a budget hearing so that we're not rushed during a committee meeting. So I'm joined today by Dana Jeans, who's our SVP and Chief Financial Officer, and Mr. Rod Cleek, Vice President of Rates and Budgets.
Hey, real quick, we've got some background noise online. So thank you for muting that. And if you join us online, maybe shoot a text to Ashley or something, or raise your hand online and we can know that you're here. We'll recognize you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did cover some of this in committee, but I'll hit the high points as we go through before we get into the meat of the budget. But I'm going to start with the electric budget and basically just suggest that what we have proposed continues the progress that we have made in improving our electric system's reliability for the near term and making us ready for the challenges of tomorrow. That means that we have to do all of the regular and recurring maintenance on our system, the preventative maintenance like tree trimming. We have to renew and replace infrastructure on a regular basis. And then over the next 4 to 5 years, we have kind of a one-time very large bump in infrastructure improvements. That is the modernization of our grid with the automated distribution management system and inclusion of battery storage. So you'll see a pretty significant bump over the, from now to 2029 for that one-time kind of major improvement. This does fund, you will recall, the way forward, which was 5 years of improvements to the system. That's regular and recurring replacement of infrastructure. We're going to continue that for 5 years and the next 5 years after that. This also supports expansion of our electric system. As communities around us experience growth in electric load. Those substations become loaded to a point where they need to be expanded or a new substation added, and we'll talk about that. And then this does add our first ever battery storage at the utility scale. This allows us to have some resilience. It allows us to save money for our customers, and it really does start us down the path of where we're all going to be for the next decade. And also, we've talked about this a bit, but the design and acquisition and build out of a new state-of-the-art operations center that controls electric, gas, and water. I know you've been out there. That's the Covington Pike facility that is out of date and needs to be updated with a new facility. On the gas and water side, modernizing our water production. We'll modernize 5 of our 10 with new filter technologies. We'll be adding a new Allen pumping station to replace the Allen pumping station that's been out of service, or excuse me, we'll add new service for about the next 50 years through the Allen pumping station. There's additional money here for us to increase the pace of lead service line replacements. And this year, the first time ever, we're going to fund replacements on the customer side. We'll do a pilot project there and use some federal grant money to continue that work. We're also going to continue the safety of and integrity of our gas system. We have a very large gas distribution system. Continue to replace those steel taps, and we'll also make some improvements to our LNG plant, and then conduct that 5-mile extra high pressure transmission line. We do have some support facilities coming along behind that goes with staffing. In this budget, we do have a 3% increase for general employees, 3.5% that was negotiated 4 years ago for our represented employees. This budget funds 2,700 full-time employees, and we also will get underway with our North Service Center, which is up off of Meager, just north of Jackson, give us some expanded storage, heavy equipment, and vehicle maintenance. So moving into how we got to this point, and I've already covered this, so I'm going to breeze through it, but the bottom line is we needed to cut trees at an aggressive pace in order to get our reliability back up, and we did that last year. We exceeded our goal by 18%. I'm happy to say that we're 20% ahead of goal this year, so I think we're going to be well ahead of where we were last year, and last year was a very aggressive year, first time we met our goal in many years. So that shows where we are. We also committed to replace that outdated infrastructure. We had a commitment 5 years ago to do 20 transformers and to do 60 circuit breakers. We far exceeded that, to do 2,600 poles and to do underground service line replacements, and we are on pace to meet or exceed those goals. So that commitment back in 2020 is being met. This was the grid modernization. We have 530 of the 1,100 that were originally contemplated. We stopped momentarily to put that radio system in, the PLTE. You'll hear about that. And then we'll get started again and get underway with those installations at a pace of between about 200 of those units every year. On our gas infrastructure, we also met those commitments for cast iron retrofit, steel tap replacements, and regulator stations. This is the extra high pressure transmission line that we have to do 5 miles of construction this year. That's the one that you see in the red. We thought we'd get that done in 2024, but it's going to be completed in 2025. On the water infrastructure, we've also met all of our goals for new wells, for lead service line replacements, and digital process controls. All this to say that these investments are helping to improve reliability for our customers, reliability that they count on so that they can live a productive life. We are not at the finish line yet for improving reliability, but with those investments in tree trimming, preventative maintenance, and improving our infrastructure, this year has been one of the better years in the last 6 years, topping the performance in 5 of 7 categories and second best performance in 2 of those 7 categories. Again, trending in the right direction. For our electric overview, this, in addition to doing the preventative maintenance, the tree trimming, and the regular maintenance that you do, this will be your 5-year plan. Every year we'll do 2 substation transformers. Every year we'll do 10 circuit breaker replacements. Every year 600 poles will be replaced, 1,500 will be improved, and 90,000 feet of underground cable. That was what you'll see us doing each and every year for the next 5 years. This year, we'll get underway in that construction of that central shops replacement up at the North Service Center. So that's a capital project that will be finite and not lasting the next 5 years. This is that one-time uplift for grid modernization. This is the distribution automation and all of the switches that accompany that and the battery storage. So you'll see those automated switching devices we talked about. You'll see the communications network that drives it all. You'll see the background of that, the information systems, the computers, and the software that control it. A new system operations facility is also a one-time capital that we're going to need to upgrade our facilities. And then the distributed energy resources also in the form of utility scale batteries. We're going to talk about that, Mr. Chair. When we get to that portion of the budget, you'll see there was some under execution of capital this year in electric. All of that is because we were a little optimistic about our ability to get batteries in the system in 2024. We could not get the transformers in time, so you'll see the under execution is wholly attributed to the battery installation. So we've decided to flow that into 25, 26, 27. When I mentioned growth in the system, you'll see anything on this chart. These represent the service territories of our substations. If it's in red or orange, that means that substation we need to pay attention to, and we're going to have to replace or put some new capacity there. What you see on the right is the result of 5 years of either new substations or adding capacity to existing substations. And so you'll see that there's continued opportunity for growth all across our service territory. The one exception after the 5 years you'll see is the number 2 on the left that's in and around St. Jude. Very congested downtown, but we are working on a different solution there that we think will bring that capacity back into line as well. Okay, so between what we will spend in 2024, the materials that we've acquired in 2024 that we can install in 2025, and what we are putting into the 2025 budget, it will be about $438 million of capital over the 2-year period of time. Moving into the gas system, there's that 5 miles of extra high pressure line. That is our very large project in the gas system this year. That's down from Weaver to Gill Road. The steel tap couplings, you'll see places in the city where we're making street cuts. That's either to do lead service line replacements or replacing that service line from the gas line on the street over to customers' homes. That's what that steel tap coupling work is. Regulator stations ensure that we have the appropriate pressure across the system. We'll be replacing 2 of those every year. And then you can see again that new engineering and operations center. The water overview, the Allen pumping station, that is a very large capital project, about $90 million to put a new pumping station in to replace the old Allen pumping station. We'll be adding 8 new wells each and every year, and that is reflected in our projected rates going forward. The pumping station filter media, that's those 5 that we're going to replace over the next 5 years at 5 of our pumping stations. And then that's the lead service line work that we're going to do each and every year, about $1,500 a year minimum. And then we're also going to be on that 10-year plan to get rid of both public and private side. There's the pilot you see there, the 255 in 2025, using grant funding so we can figure out how to do this on the private side with local contractors. We think that's going to be a compelling story for our community when we get that underway. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jeans, and he's going to go through the budget details. I realize we hit that part I talked about before. I just wanted to give you the top level view. Mr. Jeans didn't get to talk much about this, so I'll let him spend a little more time on the details. Dana?
All right. Thank you, President McGowan. This slide that we see here is basically a summary of the major points of the 2025 budget. There are no rate increases proposed for the gas and water divisions. The second year of the 4% electric rate increase will be implemented in 2025. As you recall, that was approved last year, a series of 4% increases. The first went into effect in 2024. Another one will be in January of 2025 and then 2026 as well. And that results in a typical monthly residential customer impact of about $5 per month. As President McGowan mentioned, this focus of this budget and the upcoming plan for the next 5 years is improving our reliability and resiliency and making additional investments in aging infrastructure. We do have wage increases of 3% for a non-bargaining unit, 3.5% for a bargaining unit. basically to maintain competitive salaries for our workforce. We have 36 net new positions in this budget, and there's some detail later in the presentation of exactly what those are. Primarily, they're related to engineering and operations to get the work done that we're trying to do. So our regular labor increase is about $13.4 million. That is made up of the wage increases I just mentioned, as well as the new positions primarily. The table at the bottom of this page essentially shows our authorized positions comparing 2025 and 2024. As I mentioned last time, we do not budget for all of our authorized positions because we always have a certain number of positions that are vacant because of turnover and the like. Some of the positions are difficult to fill because of the skills required. So we introduce a vacancy credit to our budget that essentially backs down what the total funding is. You can see that in the middle row there in the table. So we have essentially about 2,774 budgeted positions in the 2025 budget. And then the last row just shows a current snapshot of what our filled position level is and what the annual cost of filled positions are. Our overall O&M growth is 3.8%, or about $21.7 million higher than last year. We do have capital expenditures planned of $382 million. That's about $46 million higher than last year. Again, the new Allen pumping station, the gas transmission project, other water pumping station projects make up the bulk of that. And we continue to invest in the Way Forward initiatives as really a ongoing way of life as we renew and replace our infrastructure over the next 5 years. This slide essentially is a quick snapshot of each division: electric, gas, water. Top line is operating revenue, and then purchase power and gas cost. We mentioned how significant that is. So we spend about $1.3 billion. And by the way, all these numbers are in thousands. So we're looking at $1.6 billion, for example, for electric operating revenue. So if you subtract the purchase power and gas costs from the operating revenue, that is the margin left. That is what MLGW has to invest in our system and pay our operating expenses. So that's about $460 million in electric, about $142 million in gas, and then of course there is no purchase power or gas with water, so we have about $130 million to pay operating expenses and make investments in our capital. You can see the other lines: the operation and maintenance expenses, depreciation and amortization, our pilot payments, which again are to our local governments, almost $77 million. And so our total operating expenses are, for all divisions combined, almost $2.1 billion, and then $382 million in capital expenditures. And I'll break down each division a little bit more as we go. So this is the electric division summary comparing 2023 actual to 2024 projected, 2024 budget, and then the 2025 budget. If you look at the top shaded line row there, operating margin variance, it's about $69 million higher than last year, and this primarily is due to the rate action, the 4% that I mentioned just a minute ago. Power costs are projected to be higher. TVA raised rates, and that was about $42 million back in October. And so you can see the other lines as far as the variance one year to the next, and we'll get into some of the details in particular of the O&M changes from one year to the next. Our change in net position, which is otherwise known as net income, is about $25 million higher than last year's budget, and our capital expenditures are $42.6 million lower than the budget from 2024. Again, a lot of that has to do with delaying the distributed energy project. Next slide basically is a similar look for the gas division. If you'll look again at the top shaded row, operating margin, it's down about $3.5 million, and that is due to lower projected sales. And while I'm at it, just in the way of how we do this budget, the operating revenue in all divisions, we do forecasts of growth in the number of customers, and then we have statistical relations between customers and usage, as well as the relation to weather. There's more usage, for example, in the summer when it's hot, air conditioning runs more. So we take our best shot at estimating what the revenue is based on our forecast of customer growth, relation to weather, and so on. And we do that for each division, and that's how we get the budget projections for revenue, and then similarly for power cost and gas cost. Again, here our change in net positions about $13.8 million lower than last year, and that's primarily because of increased operating expenses, which we'll break that down in a few minutes. Capital expenditures, almost $39 million higher, and again, that is because of the transmission pipeline project, as well as the building for the new systems operation. Our funding for the projects are from cash and operating revenues. The next page, again, is the summary for the water division. Next page. And again, you see the variance of about $600,000 for, or rather $400,000 for operating margin compared to last year's budget, $500,000 rather. Change in net position is about $3.3 million lower than last year due to higher operating expenses and lower other income. And by the way, the other income is primarily interest earnings on our working capital. So we're projecting that to drop really in both the gas division and the water division because we are drawing cash down to make these investments rather than raising rates or borrowing money. Therefore, there's less invested to earn income. And we also are projecting lower interest rates as the Fed takes its action, and that filters through the economies. All right, this slide shows the electric O&M details, and I'll draw your attention to the right side of the chart first. And if you'll see the column called LEMO, that's our abbreviation for labor, material, equipment, and other. This is a way we break down what the categories of our operation and maintenance expenses are. Labor is pretty straightforward. Equipment really has to do with the utilization of our fleet of vehicles, backhoes, etc., how that is used. And the usage of those pieces of equipment is assigned to various jobs, whether they be maintenance or capital, based on the number of hours that a certain piece of equipment is used. So that's what that's about. Material is basically supplies and things of that nature, wire and cable, whatever. And then the other is broken down in greater detail on the left side of the chart. And you can see some of the major drivers there. Pension, that's driven really from an actuary study and the recommendations that they have that we're required by state law to fund. So that's going up about 3.7 million. Tree trimming we've talked about already. We're increasing our pace of tree trimming. Contributions in aid of construction is up, and that's what contributions in aid of construction are. They're contributions from customers that contribute to a job. They offset our expense, and there are also grant dollars that we may receive that offset expense. So we have applied for some grants, and we did not unfortunately get them, and therefore our contribution, which is the negative number, dropped, so that drove up our operation and maintenance. And you can see the other categories. It all totals up to about 13.3 million for the other category, about 17.5 for the total of electric O&M. The next page is a similar breakdown for
Excuse me,
gas.
Dana, real quick.
Yes.
Just wanted to, for the record, Councilwoman Green has joined us. So everyone keep your seat. Thank you.
So again, this slide shows the gas division O&M details. Again, the right side is our labor, material, equipment, and other. And you can see the total variance, and then how the other categories are broken down on the left side. Some of the contracting services, we're using a little bit more contracting, but when you boil it all down, for the other category, it's a very small variance compared to 2024. Then in water, similar comparison. On the right side, you can see there's only about $168,000 difference from one budget to the next, so very small variance overall. Next slide shows our capital expenditures by division. And you can see it broken out 2024 compared to 2025.
Excuse me, Dana, real quick. Councilwoman Swearingen in Washington has joined us.
So you can see for each division the variation in capital. Again, electric is down compared to 2024. The other two divisions are up. And so you can see a total of 382 million compared to 336 million. And we do anticipate funding, again, some of that contribution and aid from grants. In particular, the water is pretty sizable because that's a American Rescue Program grant for filter media. The next slide is just a visual of how the capital plan breaks down by division. Electric is the bulk of the capital plan at 60%, with the other two divisions right at 20% each. The electrical division capital highlights are shown on this page. Kind of a breakdown pie chart by distribution, production, substation, general plant, and you see a listing of some of the major projects here. I won't go through all of those. You have the budget book that we sent you as well, and beginning on page 6 of the budget book and following for a few pages are the details of all of the electric capital. Similarly, on the next page is gas capital highlights, and again, you've got the pipeline, $24 million. That's the new pipeline we've talked about. The building upgrades, that's the engineering and operations building, and then other items. And in your budget book for 2025, details are found on page 15 and following for the gas division. And then finally, the water division, pumping station upgrades are the lion's share of the highlights of the capital plan, as well as well upgrades See our lead service line replacements, about $8.5 million there for that project. And again, in the budget book, that all begins on page 22. And then we have a 5-year capital expenditure plan summary on the next page. Mr. President. This basically just shows by major category what our estimate of spending for the year of 2024 is projected to be relative to our 2024 budget, and 25 through 29 projections for each year by big category. There's also detail in your budget book that breaks this down further in the 5-year capital plan tab toward the back of the budget book. But as you can see, if you add up all of the 5 years, 2025 through 2029, you get about $1.7 billion in the 5-year plan. A large part of that, of course, almost $1 billion, is the electric division, with the distributed energy and reliability enhancements in substations as well as distribution. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rod Cleek. He's our VP of Finance and Accounting, to go through what we call our cash flows. This is really a financial model that we use to kind of look out ahead into the future to determine when we need rate increases or bond issues. It's just kind of a tool that we use to help forecast. So I'll let Rod walk through that.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Jeans. So first, let's talk about our financial metric targets that we have internally. So the first one is our days of cash. We try to target a minimum of 45 days. And the best practice from the Government Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, really recommends a target range minimum of about 90. Yeah. And that's 45 days of operating expenses that we target to have on hand. The second is change in net position, which we often refer to as net income. And we always endeavor to target to have positive change in net position if possible. And it is worth noting that our state law, Tennessee state law, prohibits 2 consecutive years of negative net position for both the gas and the water divisions. And then lastly is our debt service coverage. So whenever we issue bonds, revenue bonds, we have a debt covenant for those bonds. It's 1.2 times coverage, which is essentially adding up your revenues and then dividing that by your total debt service for a given year. And we are to maintain the 1.2 coverage. It's also worth noting that when we do talk to Standard & Poor's and Moody's, they have a little bit more stringent coverage calculations when they evaluate utilities. So the next slide is the electric division cash flow projection. So just the key here is projection. And so we have historical years here in terms of the metrics that we just talked about. Any color in red is kind of below our target, if you will. And then I do want to highlight the year 2025, which is boxed in green there. So that's the budget year that we are discussing this year with our budget process. And so if you look at 2025, you can see that we are projecting at the end of the year to have about 64 days of cash of operating expenses on hand. Our debt service coverage is about 4.0. And as Dana has mentioned, our change in net assets targeted that we're budgeting is $35.9 million. And as Dana had already mentioned, you have already approved the 4% rate action in last year's budget for 2025. And also for 2026, which is the column just to the right of that, you can see in row 28, you can see those two 4% increases in 2025 and 2026. And then also, if I draw your attention back to the green box for 2025, you'll see that we are intending on issuing about another $250 million of revenue bonds to help with this capital plan that President McGowan did talk about over the next 2 to 3 years. We do have a capital plan that is investing in our system, and so we are going to plan to issue that $250 million of bonds in 2025. Now, going forward, you'll notice that not until 2028 are we projecting another rate increase in row 28 out in 2028. You'll see that rate increase again. This is all projections, and things can change between now and then, but we are projecting a 2% rate action there in 2028. And in addition to that, another $125 million bond issuance for that particular year. And so on the far right-hand column, you can see the summation of years 2025 through 2029. You can see that our capital expenditures in the far right column in row 26 is almost $1 billion. And you'll see that our rate increase revenue in row 29 is about $160 million, and then our debt issuance is also $375 million for that particular period. And so that's the projection for the electric division cash flow. Moving on to the next division, which is our gas division. I will start with the green box again, which is 2025. We are projecting to have ending cash and investments of $135.7 million, which is 187 days of cash. Now, we will be drawing that down, as Mr. Jeans mentioned earlier in the slides, that our gas division capital is going to be paid with a combination of our cash and our operating revenues. As you can see in row 29, we have no debt issuance planned in 2025 or any subsequent year through 2029. We will be drawing down that cash balance over time. You heard me mention the 2-year state of Tennessee negative change in net position. We have in the past notified them. President McGowan has written them a letter of our financial plan intentions to draw down our cash over time, and so that's the current plan as we have it here now. So no rate actions in 2025 or 2026, and you will notice in row 27 that in 2027 we are projecting about a 10% rate action and a subsequent 9% rate action in 2028. We'll draw your attention to row 30, which is the average residential bill impact. It's projected at a little bit more than $4 a month. And so that's the projection for the gas division. So moving on to the water division, you can see in 2025, we will be drawing down our cash at the end of 2025 to around $28.5 million, which will be about 86 days of cash of operating expense for the water division. I will also note that in row 23 of 2025, our debt service coverage drops to 1.76 for that particular year. And so, no, we're not requesting, as Mr. Jeans mentioned earlier, we're not requesting any rate action in 2025 for the water division. For 2026, we are projecting, if you look at row 27, a rate action of about 15% for each year all the way out to 2029. I will draw your attention to row 30, though. The average residential impact is a little bit south of $3. So you've got $2.88, $3.31, $3.80, and $4.37 in years 26 through 29 as the projection there. And so this projection can change, and we know that we can possibly tweak those down and maybe issue more debt. And so we're internally discussing that for the future plans. But right now in 2026, we'll draw your attention to row 29. In 2026, we are projecting about $150 million bond issuance, and we'll pair that with another bond issuance in 2028 of about 50 million. So the total indebtedness over that period will be about 200 million between 2026 and 2029. The Water Division currently has about $110 million of debt outstanding. And so if you add the 200 million to the 110 million that's outstanding, you get a little north of 300 million, which will put the Water Division at about 40% leveraged at the end of 2028. And so again, we realize these are just projections. We're still, a year away from 2026 budget. And so we're going to work to come up with a plan, and this is the plan that we have at the moment for rate projections. With that, I will turn it over to President McGowan.
Thank you, Rod. And I will, point of emphasis on those. The numbers you see on the page for the years after this will not be what you see next year, because these are projections. And as he said, things will change during the course of the year. We just finished a cost of service study and a rate study. So when we evaluate that, those things will change as we go through the year. I will say we presented, this budget has been approved by our board. We presented basically to committee the top level of this to you all on the 12th. We got about halfway through, so we asked for this presentation. Again, I appreciate your time coming today so we could take our time to get through the whole presentation. I know it's on the agenda, full agenda tomorrow, but yes, tomorrow, but we also have a number of committee meetings on the 3rd, on the 17th as well. So, but the first opportunity would be tomorrow afternoon. Moving on, I will say that this is a continuation of what we've been doing over the last 2 years to try to, and last 5 years, to really improve reliability. We always know that this is a balance of affordability and reliability, and we all know too well the costs of poor reliability and the impact it has on our customers. This is about a 3% growth in our O&M, a little higher than last year. Our capital is up, but again, I just want to emphasize there's really 3 parts of capital. The capital you spend each and every year for execution and to keep your system operating, the capital that you have to renew and replace infrastructure, and then kind of those one-time big chunks of capital, and that's what we're seeing, that extra high-pressure transmission line for gas, the new pumping station for water, and then the big bump is for that grid modernization that will be completed over the next 4 years. That is one that you wouldn't typically see again going forward. So we're putting forth a budget that we believe meets the needs of our customers for the reliability that they have come to expect and the improvements in reliability that they deserve. And so that's what we're putting forth to you today, Mr. Chair, and subject to your questions, that completes our presentation.
All right, thank you, President McGowan. Any council members' questions? We got Councilwoman Green.
Thank you for this. I appreciate the thoroughness of this presentation and the budget book. I appreciate you get them to us early and not giving it to us last minute. One point of clarity, I know you said that the rate increase on the electric division we approved. I would like to note that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us here today. 4 of us did not approve it because we weren't on the body yet. So it was the prior council. Looking at this, the biggest thing that jumps out to me, of course, is the rate increases that are coming. And I know you said that those are going to shift over time. And I know that we have them broken down by division, but if you look at just 2028 alone and add up electric and gas and water and the increases, it's over $11, and that's per pay period, so per month. So we're talking over $130 a year. And that might not feel like a lot to everybody, but it does feel like a lot to a lot of Memphians, because unfortunately we have a very high poverty rate, and they don't get to pick and choose if they're just going to pay the rate increase on electric versus gas versus, they're going to have to pay all of it. And it really adds up over the year to their budgets. And again, the council, not everybody who's sitting here today, passed a property tax increase, and there are just a lot of other inflationary issues happening in our community. And so those are the things that concern me the most. And we'll continue to talk, I guess, as we get closer to those times. I know there's not rate increases for this year, so that are different than what the previous council had approved. So I'm happy for that. I'm also happy about the fact that when I go out to community centers, when I go knock doors, I'm not hearing about liability issues like I was when I ran for office. It is clear the tree trimming has had a huge impact. The upgrades to the system have had a huge impact, and I want us to continue on that path. But I do want us to be mindful of, the average citizen and what their bill actually comes out to, because it may not seem like a lot if you see the average bill impact for the electric division in 2028 is $2.76, but that doesn't really tell the whole story, because you've got to add in the other divisions and you've got to add it up for the year. So more of a statement than a question. I'm sorry. Just wanted to note that for the record. Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Thank you, Councilwoman. We'll
Sure.
go.
Could I just add one thing to that?
Go ahead,
Very
President.
briefly. Thank you for that, ma'am, and I do want to say that this is in the water budget instead of putting forward what we expect. So just using water as an example, because that's the one that stands out. In that forecast includes not just the Allen pumping station, but another new pumping station. That's a discussion we can have. How soon do we need that? It also includes 8 new water wells every year. We had been putting about 3 in, and we've talked in this body before about, when the winter freeze hit and I could only pump out about 200 million gallons, but my pumping stations could do 350 million. That's because we didn't have enough water wells. That's another point of discussion. This represents what I believe we need to do to try to get back to that full capacity. That discussion can take many shapes. It needs to reflect what we collectively desire. We're putting forth what we think we should do to meet the needs of the customer base with that new pumping station and putting in that aggressive number of wells every year. But again, that's the back and forth here is like, how many do we need? How fast do we need them? And I use that as an example of the things we're going to have to talk about. The other piece is we just got the cost to serve and the rate study back for water. So we have to determine that. There's been some dialogue about the declining block rate that we have for some customers. We're going to look at that this year. I anticipate that will have an impact as well. So I fully get your point about all of them coming together, but we're putting forth the budget again this year is the 2025 budget. I'd be remiss if I didn't put those in there, those projections looking forward, so we can have that dialogue. I don't want to set and forget this year. I want to execute the 25 budget and then start having dialogues about what we need to do for the coming year, even before we get to budget season. That's why we put these in here.
All right, thank you, President McGowan. We're going to go just real quick to Councilwoman Cooper Sutton, but I wanted Councilwoman Logan to know that we see you online. She raised her hand electronically.
Yes.
So we see you, Councilwoman Logan. Councilwoman Cooper Sutton.
Councilwoman Pearl Walker was, and I'm going to let her have the floor. So when you say real quick,
Okay,
what
Councilwoman.
does that mean? We have to be done by a certain time, or I just want to.
No, and I'm so sorry. Yeah, I've moved fast. I mean, so we have this going until 5 o'clock, and yeah, so I think we have time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. If you want to text me, you're welcome to do so, but we're not able to recognize you during committee.
Yes, sir. Hey, and Dennis, good to see you. Appreciate you coming. Always appreciate you coming. So this is a committee meeting, right? So for everyone to view and everything, we'll have the comments section tomorrow. I'll stay after and talk to you, but right now we're trying to let the council members speak for the people today for this meeting. So Councilwoman Walker, then Cooper Sutton, and then Councilwoman Logan. Thank you.
Thank you. So as it relates to the location at Covington Pike, is that a new physical location, or you just doing upgrades at that location?
We believe it's too small for our purposes, so we haven't decided where it needs to be. So the money in the budget here is what we believe we need to start building that out. The range could depend on the size of the facility that we determine, whether we're finding one that we adaptively reuse. If you had to build a new facility, it's going to be more expensive than adaptively reusing another one. So with this is just starting us on the journey of building that new system operations center. So we have to keep that one operating. That one will stay as a backup. Today, we don't have an adequate backup for system operations. We have no backup for our CARES, which is our customer outage system. So that will become the backup in the event that the primary fails. So today, we have a little less resiliency than we'd like.
Okay, so at this time, have you determined how much land you need for the new location?
Well, no, ma'am, because we think the minimum viable product for us is a minimum of between 50 and 100,000 square feet for this facility to have some warehousing space, some storage space, and then also the system operations. So it's not really a function of acreage, it's a function of facility size.
Okay.
And so we can adaptively reuse a building. We have some land that MLGW owns, so that wouldn't be a concern, the size of the land. It would be certainly adequate to build a building of this size or a facility.
Okay, so the rate hike, that's the 12% rate hike, that's 4% for 3 years that 5 of us didn't vote on, that Councilwoman Green, and thank you for that, Councilwoman Green, that we did not vote on. So this rate hike is for residential only, correct?
No, ma'am, it's for every customer.
That's for every customer.
Every customer.
And how do you determine the residential rates versus the commercial rates?
So that's a good question, and I'll take just a minute to talk about it. I want you to know, first of all, that we are not alone in how the residential and commercial rates are constructed. So I think I'll just show a point of clarity so everybody can understand how that looks.
Thank you.
So if you look at the chart here, this is every utility in the country. The top line in the red or the brown is residential rates. The middle line, which is the green, is commercial rates. And the yellow line on the bottom is industrial rates. And you'll see that the average residential retail rate is $16.63 per kilowatt hour in 2024. And I'll give you the numbers for the others here in just a moment. Those rates are determined based on two relatively technical terms. One is not as technical, but number one is the cost to serve. Number two is the load factor for that load. So if you think about it like this, the cost to serve. If there is a industrial customer that consumes 5 megawatts, probably served by one substation with one line with one transformer. 5 megawatts of residential customers are served by hundreds of power lines, thousands of transformers, and thousands of lines that go to those total homes. So the infrastructure necessary for those homes is a lot more expensive to serve 5 megawatts of residential versus 5 megawatts of one industrial customer. So fewer pieces to serve that large load. The second factor is, and again, this is an industry standard, not MLGW's industry phenomenon. The second is, what is the load factor? So if you think about a factory that's running 24 hours a day, they use the same amount of electricity at all hours of the day. And so that load factor you can plan for, and you don't have to have as much excess. You just build the system for that load. For residential customers, we have a very low load factor, meaning that in the mornings when people are getting ready, we use a lot of energy. In the middle of the day, not so much. At the end of the day, when everybody's home cooking, we use a lot of energy. So we have to have a lot of flexibility in the system, which makes it more expensive to build. Those two things, and I'll let my team correct me if I'm wrong, that's the basic discussion of why there's a different rate. And the energy providers at the bulk level, in our case, it's TVA. East of us would be PJM, west of us, it would be MISO. The people who are producing the energy set that industrial, commercial, or residential rate based on those two things, cost to serve and load factor. And then we add on top of that at MLGW our own cost to serve. So all of that added up, and I'll show you on the next slide here. Those charts, I just pulled that out just to show you where we are. Residential nationally is $16.63. At MLGW, it's $11.60. Commercial, $13.39. We're 11.3. And then industrial, $8.72, and we're at 6.2. So back on this chart, that's all utilities nationwide. And again, that's average. So there's many utilities that are much higher than that. We are definitely bringing down the average based on our rates here. But that's how we set it, is load factor and cost to serve. And those are two things that we factor in when you're setting that rate.
So it costs more to service residential customers. That's
Yes,
what
ma'am.
you're saying in essence.
Yes, ma'am. Because there are many, many more of them, and many, many smaller lines, and many more places you have to go, many more poles, many more circuits that you have to put in to serve those residential customers.
Okay.
I'm sorry? Yes, on a per unit basis, per unit of electricity that's being generated.
Okay, and sir, you mentioned something about applying for grants that you weren't able to receive. Was that for what reasons?
I can speak to that.
We
a
didn't
little
qualify, or was it, go ahead.
They were very competitive. We applied for about $120 million of infrastructure money for our electric distribution system. We got a letter that gave us a number of reasons about why we didn't get that. We combined with EPB, which is Chattanooga, and some other utilities for a battery grant. We all combined. EPB has won a number of grants in the past. We together got declined for that. All told, it was probably about $200 million worth of grants we didn't get. I'd like to say that, you know, we're not a swing state, but we're not a swing state. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but we did get a letter that gives us the details. We're encouraged to reapply. The one that we didn't get, the $100 million or more that we didn't get, that was the second time we applied. We used all of the Justice 40 justifications. We think we were right in the sweet spot of what people would like to fund. And we had people review who said this should be really competitive. We had some help. And again, we just were not awarded the grant. So we're going to keep at it. We have people that do this for a living down in our organization to try to get us as many grants as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you for that. So we'll just continue to chip away at that
Yes,
and
ma'am.
see what
Absolutely.
we can come up with, most definitely. Is there any entity or entities that regulate the frequency at which we can go up on the rates versus not going up on the rates? In terms of amount and time frequency, because we're getting this 12%, this is 4% for 3 consecutive years.
Not like the Public Utility Commission or anything. You are a rate-making body, so you would regulate that.
So we are the only ones who regulate that.
We have to have our rates approved by TVA for electric. The Board of Commissioners, MLGW Board of Commissioners, they also have a say, because if they didn't approve it, I wouldn't bring it to you. So they have to approve it too. They also have questions before I bring it to you. So
Yeah, so I'm aware of that. I'm just, if there's a larger body or entity that regulates what the board and what we can or cannot approve, especially with respect to frequency.
No, I think the main thing that we mentioned was this 2 years of negative net income or change in net position that the state could step in. The state has done that with some utilities that did not raise rates. The state would come in and determine a rate increase and force the local government to implement that. We have never been in that situation, but some other utilities, particularly small water utilities, have been faced with that situation.
Okay, and finally, for the moment, the cost prediction. So and if you've mentioned this, then, but the cost predictions, are you factoring in potential rate hikes for TVA as well when you're factoring these cost predictions?
The cost of energy, I think we're factoring in, but not like our particular rate. Go ahead, Dan.
So in the cash flow projections that we just showed, what we're looking at there are strictly our increases. If TVA raises rates, that would be additional. By our contract with TVA, we're required to pass along wholesale rate increases to retail customers. So that's a pass-through that is really independent of any other action.
So like when you all come forth to us with rate hikes, we may be for or against, the public may be for or against, but per the contract with TVA, when they come forth with rate hikes, you can't say anything, you can't question, you just have to receive that and just apply it accordingly.
Well, certainly anyone could speak to the TVA board, which is.
Can you all speak to the TVA board?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
But they are the regulatory body to determine TVA rate increases that are passed along to local power companies like MLGW.
Okay. And that was a reference to possibly, what would happen, after January 1st, but it wasn't said exactly that way. But I know January 1st, there will be people who will be taking a look at TVA. And so let's see what happens with that. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cooper Sutton.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. These questions that I'm about to ask you are for some constituents that knew this day was happening for the budget. And I have a question. I heard my colleague Green said, I'm glad to hear that your constituents have no reliability issues. So that's good that one part of it works. But over in Super District 8, it's a different thing. And that's the highest, where the highest level of poverty is in my district where I serve. There's one thing I want to ask the question, and I'm not sure how it goes, because I haven't had to call and ask for extensions, especially with those that work from 8 to 5, 9 to 5, and the can't. That's really trying. And there's always some opposition whenever they call and trying. I was at Bishop Brandon Porter's Christmas in November. Mm-hmm. And of course, when they recognize you, it's just not only just out there just having fun. They want to know what we're doing and how we are pushing back. As my colleague, Councilwoman Green and Pearl Walker said, we were not on this board decision when the rate increase happened. I think it's 12% over the next, 4 or 5 years. And so we have customers that are, and I have people that call me and email me that are deciding whether they're going to buy their medicine, buy bread, or pay their electric bill. And it's very heart-wrenching, to hear that. And so what is in place? I talked to Councilman Espinosa, and he did say there are many options out there when people call in, am I correct? That needs extensions when they're billed. But when you have the working person that may just come into a bump, because we're dealing with old houses here in Memphis. Winterization, the windows, all that stuff plays a part. We have senior citizens that can't even hardly pay their bills, but when they're calling for extensions, they're not being granted the extensions they're needing if they're a working people. And so I ran across a lot of people out there that day that asked that question. What happens, or what do we have in place for those that work and maybe don't get paid till next 2 weeks, or maybe, every 2 months, but they're working and they just run into a small bump? How are we addressing that need for them? And do we have something in place for them? That's my first question. The second is, I think there is a 50 million electrical miscellaneous, if I'm not mistaken. distribution expense shown on the proposed 2025 operating budget. Could that be broken down? I mean, what is miscellaneous? What does that mean when you say, when you got $50 million? And maybe it's in my book, and I haven't seen it yet. I don't have my book in front of me. And so if you can just kind of break that down to me, if you can tell me what that is, we would greatly appreciate that. Because this is an increase of $14 million over the last 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. 1 year, sorry, 1 year. And over the last year, $36 million, which is a 39% increase. So can you just kind of let the customers know? They just want to know, what's going on. And I think this is the first council, and thank you, President. You're always open. It doesn't matter what it is, and we appreciate that. We appreciate the presentation. But that's one of the questions, please.
Okay, sure. So Timothy Davis is here, our Chief Customer Officer. He can help me with the programs, but I will say that we have a number of programs, and he can list them all off. But first, there is a payment plan if people run into a blip and they have a high bill or they run into an issue. We can grant people a payment plan. We typically try to do that over a few months. That has been extended in some cases up to 10 months' time. That started in the COVID era. There is certainly utility assistance. The city of Memphis has granted $1 million. We can help people with utility assistance. We have the federal utility assistance that we also offer to individuals. And then there's obviously the Plus One program where customers provide extra money for their peers. And so Plus One is money that we pass out through Neighborhood Christian Center, that's through Plus One, through MIFA. So they can also get food assistance while they're there as well. And then there's the federal dollars that come along with that. We also have something called the Gift of Comfort. And the Gift of Comfort is something that people can do for anybody. So if I wanted to help pay Ms. Cooper Sutton's bill, I could do an anonymous Gift of Comfort and pay for her bill. And other customers are doing that. Yes, ma'am. So look for that credit on your account. That's right. Merry Christmas. The other thing, it's a little bit of an uncomfortable reality, but we also have a program where we actually allow customers to carry a bit of a balance, and that's unusual for MLGW. We won't cut you off, but they carry a bit of a balance. That has a net drag, meaning we're carrying all these uncollected receivables here, and that was a program that was put into place to give people that little bit of extra cushion to say you don't have to get it to zero, but you got to make some payment to keep the lights on. But customers learn pretty quickly, and they eat that capacity up, and then we're carrying that balance forever, and it's just as if you're back to zero again. So we have that program in place, so you don't have to get it all the way to zero, but you have to get it down to a level depending on if you're a good pay customer or have had some trouble in the past. And so that is a significant number of programs we offer our customers. And Timothy, I think, can speak from being customer officer in other places, many more than most other utility companies have, because we are a municipally owned utility here in Memphis, Tennessee. Absolutely right. Sure. Yeah, you're speaking of the registers on the smart meters. So that's right. Yep. So we had the president of Honeywell in our office, and we made demands for all of that, to pay for all of our costs, to pay for all the replacements, and to pay for the costs incurred by MLGW. So that's a work in progress right now, but you can bet that we've made demands to be made whole for all of that. But do you want to talk about the programs, Timothy?
So, as you stated, Councilwoman, and this is something you and I have talked about regularly, and you know how very passionate I am about helping our folks. We have well over 27% poverty, and as President McGowan said, we have more programs here than any other utility company that I've been at to help customers. So at the very high end, we have a program that folks are allowed to carry a balance of up to $199 cases $399. So let me reiterate that. I know of no other utility in North America that allows customers with bad credit or have difficulty paying bills to have a balance of up to $399 or $199. And the limits are based on their ability to pay. And historically, if folks don't have ability to pay, that's yes, ma'am. In addition to that, roughly 32% of our calls to the call center are for payment arrangements. Now, we have gone above and beyond as well, because we've reported this here before, where our customer advocacy team has partnered with the county and other city agencies to open up our community offices during the weekend, where we had employees volunteer. And one day in particular, we offered that on a Saturday, and we had over 200 customers come, and we offered payment arrangements. We've also done a number of outreach events, making customers aware of our programs that we offer. We also have deferred payment arrangements and roughly 6 or 7 other programs specifically to help customers of all types, whether they be income qualified or not, to provide assistance. Our folks take that very seriously. Councilman Spinoza actually got to come out and listen to some calls here recently and got to see the level of empathy that we have in caring about our customers and offering them payment, whether they be deferred payments, whether they be programs that we partner with the county or the city. I am extremely proud of the improvements and strides that we've made, and not only that, but we've given our employees training in empathy and improved customer service to answer these calls with respect. And we take roughly well over 1 million calls a year, and 32% of those are around payment arrangements. We do have plans for the future to make those automated and self-service, to make it easier for customers who qualify for those programs to get access to those programs immediately. We also send reminders in the bill of where you are with your payments. So we have continued improvements, but I know we can continue to do better. But MLGW has more programs to offer those customers than any other utility I've seen in my 43 years in this business.
So late fees are only applied once. They're not applied to the balance, so it's not compounding on any balance.
Mr. Tim, I'm sorry, thank you. For 5.2% in this year, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's 9.75%. And what budget actions are we taking to ease the heavy financial burden on our constituents?
So I'll come back to we do have a voice at the all-customer meeting, and Mr. Jeans has attended that, and just like the other local power companies, we have advocated for, there was some discussion about what level of rate increase there could be and what their commitment was for rate increases. I will tell you that I appeared last year at the TVA Board of Commissioners TVA board meeting when they decided to make a rate increase. And so we have advocated on behalf of our customers to ensure that we keep the rate increases either reasonable or pushed out to meet the commitments that were made. What you see here in our budget is what we have committed to balance affordability with reliability, and that's what we're doing here. In addition to the customer programs that we have, We're trying to make it affordable for everybody and to provide affordability programs for people who need that extra help.
Do y'all have a database that identify those that are constantly having issues with their billing? Do y'all have a database that shows that?
Timothy, I don't know that we have a database that shows that, but we.
Or do you have a, system where you can keep up with that, where this is happening?
At present, no. In plans for 2025, in collaboration with our Information Services Department, we want, as I said earlier, 32% of the calls are for payment arrangements. We want to be able to create self-service and automation options for those customers that call regularly and those who qualify, to allow them to just automate being able to do that without having to actually talk to a person, or to be able to do it online. I've done that in other utilities, and my goal is to do that here in partnership with our information technologies folks.
How successful was it there? Did
Extremely.
it give them the opportunity, if the automated system is in play, and what if it does not meet where they, that won't work, and, the online options? Does it trigger them, or does it give them other options to do so to meet their needs if it's automated or online?
Where there are exceptions, and there's always exceptions, they are allowed to escalate that call and speak to a live person to address their specific issue. Obviously, we're designing these for the multitude of customers, and there are customers who have specific issues consistent with their individual needs. If they don't get what they want from the rep, they are able to escalate that to all the way up to our customer advocacy person, who has immediate access to executives if they need a policy decision.
Okay. Well, I know that you're working very hard. Tim, you and I talk all the time, and I appreciate the things that I see that you're doing with customer service and trying to make it better for our constituents. I don't know. It's just hard when you're out in the public and you're listening to the people, and they're struggling. And now we got this rate increase that's coming up at the beginning of January the 1st, another 4% rate increase. And I know we have all these programs, but it's not nearly touching the people that really need to be touched. I think you can do better in your communication area in your department. I think it is not visual enough for the people. So your communication, and I think we talked about that, what innovation and what different things that your new person was going to bring, and we have seen nothing. It's the same old that's happening, and it's a lack of communication. If these programs are out there and all these resources are out here and things are happening the way they say they're happening, the things that we're dealing with as a council person, and I really want to work with, are very low-hanging fruit that you all should be able to do. And your communication department should be up to more tech as far as getting things out and these resources being out there. Sometimes people get it at the last minute, don't even know that it's happening, have no idea that it's happening. And so I would like to see if the upcoming year, your communication department, and I can't think of her name right now, she's sitting here, to be more involved with the public as far as getting things out. And that was what was promised to us when we were here. That's why I was so very reluctant about doing it, because I kind of felt in my spirit that it would be the same kind of rhetoric that has always been going on. And that is what has happened since her appointment. And so I don't like to say things behind people's back. I like to say what I see and what I know and what the constituents are telling me as far as communication, and how we lack that so poorly here in Memphis, even with our own departments here. And so that needs to be increased and needs to be done a little bit better so the people can know that the resources are out there. So it won't be last minute, or the gifting, or some of us here at council paying people bills out of our own pockets because of just poor communication. And then last thing that I want to ask President McGowan, are we still looking to new, is this baked in the budget, or did I miss it? Or is anything baked in this budget where y'all still looking for a new facility other than downtown?
No, ma'am. As I've committed to this council that we are, MLGW headquarters is going to stay downtown. MLGW headquarters is going to stay downtown. The facilities we're talking about, and the facility we were always talking about, is a system operations facility, the one that's currently inside the meter shop and the radio shop out at Covington Pike, and that's inadequate for our purposes going forward. The second facility we're talking about is the North Service Center, where we have behind the commercial appeal. You'll see, if you drive down MLK, you'll see all kinds of transformers sitting out on next to the street. And you'll see a 126-year-old building there, which is our employees are working in there trying to fix trucks. That was decided before 2012 that was going to be relocated. We're going to break ground on that facility this year. So those are the two facilities. MLGW headquarters, and I'll just say this out loud because some people have asked me this, like, I hear alternately, well, MLGW, you got to stay downtown, and MLGW, you sure are sitting on a primo parcel of land down there. Nobody else has a Main and Beale Street address. Look, we often joke that if council and the mayor said, you guys got to get out of there, you guys might send moving trucks to get us out of there if there was somebody who had really something good to do there. But it's important for us to have the MLGW logo and headquarters downtown. There's a lot of places that we could go if that was ordered. But until such time, I think until there's an idea for a higher and better use, that there's no reason for us to explore that unless council wants us to explore that. But the other functions that I have are things that are more not headquarters related. They're not legal and HR and finance and all the things that we do downtown. They're how do I operate the system and all the modern switches that we have, and how do I make sure that our operators have their finger on the pulse of which valves to open and which valves to close and which gate stations need some work, and how do I discharge and dispatch some liquid natural gas and vaporize it and put it into the system, and how do I, when a storm happens, open and close breakers and open and close switches to make sure people's power stays on. That's what we're talking about with system operations. That's the kind of function that we need a modern facility for. So, and they're cramped into that small, outdated space at Covington Pike right now. So I got to find either a space to remodel, a place to build a new one, or a building to acquire and remodel into that. And it's got to be resilient. So probably in a place where it's storm-proof and has backup power and that kind of thing. So that's what we're talking about, ma'am.
Thank you. Did we find out what that 50 million?
Yeah,
I
oh yeah,
saw
they're
it.
working on
I
it.
see they're
So-
working on it over there. I see it's open.
Thank you for the time.
Thank
So
you.
on page 4A of your budget book, you can see the line item there, miscellaneous distribution expenses increased about 14 million over last year's budget. And so we have identified,
4A.
yeah, page 4A. Yeah, about halfway down the page, 4A, you'll see a line under the,
4A.
4A. All right, there you go. About halfway down the page, the difference column of about 14 million. I'm going to give the majority of that difference in three categories. One is environmental work that we are doing. The second is a facilities locate contract. And the third is lineman standby pay. So those are three of the major contributors to that $14 million increase for 2025.
All right, you said the environmental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so within each one of these line items, these are maybe I should forgive me for background, but these are what we call FERC accounts, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission accounts, that all electric utilities use these basic accounts with the same names and all that, and usually they are regulated by FERC in terms of like their transmission and utility rates, but we're not that way. But this account is used by all electric utilities, and so this miscellaneous distribution expense account It's comprised, like Dana mentioned earlier, of labor, material, transport equipment, and other category. And so the items that I just described for you, the environmental facilities locate and lineman standby pay, are what we call charge expenditure types within that FERC account. And so those are three of the larger increases over the 2024 budget that contribute to that $14 million variance.
Councilwoman, good?
I guess. So let's try to get some more education out here on especially in these poor areas where they are. Educating the people, and because we know what that looks like. And as I stated again, communication. Maybe partnering with Kroger's. A lot of our older people, they go in Kroger's and they shop early mornings. They can have a little resource center there, sit in there and talk about MLGW. You gotta think out the box with the people that's in your demographics. You have to think out the box with the people that are in your demographics. You can't keep doing business the same way. You're gonna keep getting the same results. So when you have different graphics, and you have a city where poverty is center, we have to think out of the box to do things differently, to make it easier for them. We already know our transportation sucks. They can't even get anywhere except that make sure the help gets where they need to get. Secondly, think out of the box to accommodate the people that President McGowan always said want accuracy, reliability. We have to think out of the box on how to be better customer service and give better customer service to them with a city with the poverty rate and the low income rate that we serve here. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Logan, you still with us?
Thank you, Chair. I am very much so still with you. And thank you, President McGowan, for your presentation and the board, your staff. We appreciate that. Just had a couple of notes. Wanted to say I do agree with my colleague in that I think it might have been Councilwoman Green, but I too am very grateful for the improvement in reliability, and I haven't been receiving as many complaints regarding reliability. However, and we'll talk about this later, the street lights is still a major issue, and the repair projects across the city, making certain that there is collaboration with the city of Memphis, departments and divisions in getting those things resolved and back in place in a timely fashion. That if you could let me know where in this budget we are addressing that issue. How is this budget going to help fix that type of thing? Because, I know there are a lot of big fish to fry in what you do, but those small things like closing down a project in a neighborhood means so much to the neighborhood. And so that collaboration between the city of Memphis and MLGW is going to be very important, critical when it comes to the neighborhoods and the communities. Just wanted to put that there. But one thing I wanted to say also about the rate increase that's projected, I wanted to know if you all could come back with some options. I know you gave the plan that you feel is going to be necessary for your service delivery that you promised and for keeping the lights on and keeping the reliability high. But because of the energy burden, I do think it is necessary for us to look at some options for the capital expenditures and, maybe pushing back or alternating years for bringing on maybe capital expenditures in water one year, capital expenditures in electricity the next year, or something like that, because of the fact that, we're looking at increases in all those areas every year starting in 2026, that, going to be problematic for some people. So if you could come back with a plan B or some options for alternating those capital expenditures, major, or those that carry a heavy price tag, that would help. And number two, if there was some way to have and you might already have it in customer service, a line dedicated to those people within a certain income level, or or seniors, or like we said this morning. So I think Councilwoman Cooper Sutton mentioned about some people that are maybe chronically late or chronically calling for extensions because of whatever reason. If there could be a line dedicated for emergencies that is different from, your normal process. So wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was a couple other things. One was about the revenue being, from page 26, the revenue being down. I wanted to know if you had ideas on why and where that's going, if you feel like that's just, something that happened, or if you feel like there's going to be a trend there. I did hear someone say that there could be a forced increase if the revenue is down for 2 years. Correct me if I'm wrong. How would that impact us if that is the case, if in all three public utilities? I know you said they enforced it on a water division somewhere, but if it's down in all three divisions, because we are unique in that we have all three, how would that impact us? And what are we doing to offset due to the fact that, we have that 3.8 lower revenue that was noted on page 26. So the last thing was about the energy burden. If we're the largest three utility service in public utility service in America, I also saw on your stats that we operate the largest artesian well system in the world. So, we have a lot of accolades. Hello?
We're here.
Yep, we're here.
Okay, last thing, with that being the case, how is this benefiting those titles or positions, benefiting us financially? I know one time we used to sell bottled water or something like that from Memphis, clean water, or shipped it. Or are there any revenue ideas that are coming from the fact that we have this great water? And then number two is, how is this benefiting the 2,626 employees? What is our ranking in terms of employee pay nationally, considering the fact that we carry these titles? Is there a way to make them benefit our our employees? Because I do know that, the electricity cost is the electricity cost. I do know that there are a lot of other costs that are on the utility bill. And I do know that the burden is not just the cost of the utilities, but it's also the salaries that people, that citizens of Memphis make. So I do think Memphis light, gas, and water should be a place where people make not only a living wage, but a great salary. And those people being non-management, non-executive level. So if you could send or come back and share, I couldn't really gather it from the budget book, what our ranking is in employee pay nationally, non-executive, and then what percentage of the 7.1 million is non-management, 7.1 million in wages is non-management and executive level. So those are a few things that I wanted to, and I will ask for a presentation on the bond rating and overview as it relates to all of the bonds that are going to be put forth. I would just like one meeting to discuss what's coming forth, what our bond rating is looking like, and how all of, what are the best practices as it relates to so many bond requests. So those were a few things. Oh, the last thing is increase on page 30. You had an increase in contracted services, and I saw that increase in contracted services in several places. But seeing as though we're trying to make certain that the people in Memphis are the ones being paid, I wanted to make sure those contracted services are being contracted with people in Memphis so that they can help with this energy burden for some of the citizens. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll save my other questions for tomorrow.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Go ahead, President.
Okay, thank you. So a few questions there. I'll give you the top level view on some of those. And first I'll say, I don't know that we have the study. I'll ask about the employee pay, the non-management, specifically where we rank there. So I'll have to ask about that. One thing I do want to come back to, because this is a common theme that I've heard, is the reliability. I just want to be clear, we're not doing victory laps on reliability. We're moving in the right direction. So that's what this is all about. That's why it's going to take a number of years to get back to where we need to be. So, yeah, we're seeing an uptick in reliability, but as you saw on my chart, even we say we're not at our goal yet. So we have lots more work to do on reliability. On the repair projects, yes, you're exactly right. We have to do a better job of coordinating with the city of Memphis and repairing the streets and the sidewalks. We now have a contract in place with a paving contractor to make those street repairs. We have coordinated with the city of Memphis engineer so that we can have a more seamless repair project. So he's given us the opportunity to pave an entire lane rather than just one little square patch when we go out and cut a whole bunch for lead service line replacements, for example. So, and that's, Councilwoman, that's spread across electric, gas, and water budgets. That paving contract is not one thing because it all comes in, and we do it in electric, the gas, and to a lesser extent, in gas and water to a lesser extent, electric. On the 2 years of negative net position. That is a comptroller of the state of Tennessee statute that was put into place to prevent there from being failing utility systems that were not meeting either the reliability or quality regulations for their customers. And it happened when a couple of water utilities were not investing any money and they were producing spotty reliability and spotty quality of water. And the same thing with gas. And so we explained our position to the comptroller that says, hey, we don't want an arbitrary rate increase simply because we've had a negative net position. And our $3.5 million is simply because of lower than expected gas sales because of an overall warmer winter. If you have an overall warmer winter, your gas sales can go down compared to the last year, and that can result in a year of negative net position. So they understand that. He understands our position. There's some different things that we would have to do to avoid that finding. We could arbitrarily raise rates just so we didn't have a year of negative net position, but we don't think that's the right thing to do. We think we should put the ratepayer dollars to best use, put it into the system, put it into the infrastructure reliability, and then allow us to keep the lowest natural gas prices in the country. The quality of the water speaks for itself. I don't know if there's the opportunity to monetize that. We had tried that before selling it, but we are always looking as a way that we could potentially help raise revenue because we are. We actually have some folks coming to help us to say, is there a way to monetize some of this? I don't know, but I'm not an expert in that, but maybe somebody can help us figure out how to do that. I will tell you, the thing that I think is going to happen with the water is maybe not to monetize it by selling it, but people are increasingly going to look for places to live where they don't have to worry about, can I drink the water, and is there enough water for me to drink? And I think that's an attractive, we ought to market that collectively about, we have some of the lowest rates, the best, hopefully we're going to get the best electric reliability over the next few years, but water and gas reliability, it's a great place to live. That water should be an attractive that drives all of us upwards. On the street lights, yes, we are coming towards the end of the period of time when we brought that down. We have gone from what was 2,700 streetlights out to now we're down in the, I think the last time I checked, about 300 service orders. So we're getting there. Again, we're never going to be completely out of the business, but we're getting there. This was a really compelling project. I think it's paying big dividends, and you all are really good about sending me ones that are out, and our team's pretty good about getting out there to get them fixed as quick as we can. So let's see. The capital expenditure timeline, that's exactly what I was speaking about, Councilwoman Logan, is, look, in the water, we have forecast a whole new pumping station of about 100 million and a whole bunch of new wells. That's a discussion I'm willing to talk about over this coming year to determine what's the best fit for our community. And you're exactly right. That's the kind of dialogue we should be having. We'll look at the percentage of the pay, and we'll have that answer for you tomorrow. I don't have it right here right now, but we'll get it for you. That's an easy thing to produce. Yes. And let's see, largest. Oh, Rod does have the answer.
Yeah,
right.
so on the bargaining unit increase of 3.5%, it's 3.8 million is the dollar amount for
Well,
that.
that's the represented number of employees. The bargaining unit is half of that. And then the majority of the rest of that is going to be for people who are not bargaining unit. That doesn't mean that they're management. It just means they're not represented necessarily.
So that was the 7 million was the question. And how much was the representative? And it's 3.8 million of that.
Okay, I think I'll see if I could do the rest of the homework and have those answered for you. That's what I have for you right now.
Okay, yeah, actually, on those, the percentages and things that I asked, if you could bring it back tomorrow, I want to give
Sure.
you all time to actually, look it over. The thing about, when you mentioned about Allen plant, when we put that, or when you put that plan together, maybe Plan B type of plan, I want to, is the Allen plant, I know we've been talking about the Allen plant so much, but I noticed that there was like a $46 million cost associated with it. And I looked in the book and it didn't, I saw the rehabilitation of the Allen plant and things like that. What is the cost to build each 8 of the wells? If you could add that, I didn't see that in
Sure.
the book. Maybe I didn't know how to find it through all of the numbers and stuff. But if you could bring back tomorrow the cost per well, so, in your Plan B,
Sure.
that would be great. I'd appreciate it.
It's about $2 million each well, but I'll get the accurate number for you.
Oh, okay. I'm good with that. Okay, thanks so much for your answers, and I'll wait to get the other information tomorrow.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. You're back.
Yeah, and I know I've got it slated to end at 5, but I am going to take time to say this because I love Coach Penny Hardaway. For those of you that don't know, University of Memphis beat UConn.
Whoa.
Final in overtime, 99-97.
Wow.
UConn is ranked number 2 in the country. That's a big deal. So shout out to Coach Hardaway and to the whole team. That's awesome. They're undefeated. So great start to the season. All right, Councilwoman, not to get us too distracted, Councilwoman Swearingen, Washington.
Yes, thank you. I had a constituent to send a question of how much of the budget was going towards the IT department as well as the smart meters.
Rod, look up the IT department. In the meter department, we have a standard allocation for new meters, and I think I can find that in there as well.
Okay.
There is some money that we've put in for other professional services to have UPA. That's that company that's helping us change those registers out. We'll get that number for you. But that's that part of that package of that we talked to the president of Honeywell to say, okay, we're expending these money to fix these things. We expect some reimbursement for all of this. So while Rod's looking up, I'll see if we can figure out how much, and if not, I'll get an answer for you on how much goes to annual investments in our meters to replenish the stock and replace ones on a normal basis, and then how much the incremental is for us to replace those faulty registers. And then that was the meter question. The other question was IT department. Okay.
Yes.
So the IT department in and of itself is about 58 million of our O&M budget. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, it is. If you look at, it's on multiple pages, but the first page it's on is AR8. And it's also on AR1. So if you go to AR1, you'll see all of the divisions that we have, like gas and water. We call them on this page, that we call them area of responsibilities. But at the top, it'll start with the president and go all the way down. And you can see about halfway through the page on AR8, you'll see information systems and technology. Excuse me, AR1. And you'll see information systems technology about the middle of the page. And you can see the labor, material, equipment, and other that we talked about earlier. And over to the far right-hand column, the grand total, you can see about 58 million.
Okay. All right. Well, I know that we have been talking about the rate increases, but I want to share a shout out because in South Memphis and Orange Mound, the utilities were going out every time it rains. And constituents were complaining because they had to lose groceries and all other types of concerns. And we have not received complaints at all like we had been. Those utilities are still on when it rains. And they have not been going off as often. So the time and money that you all have been putting into infrastructure and wiring and poles and tree trimming, it is very much appreciated and noticed. And I just want to say hats off. Thank you so much. And let's continue the great work. So we are spending some money, but at least we're seeing where our money is going. You'd rather have a $12 increase than having to replace $200 and $300 worth of groceries every other month or however. So our constituents are very much appreciative. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Real quick, we're going to go back to Councilwoman Walker and Councilwoman Cooper Sutton. I'm going to save all my shout outs for tomorrow to Timothy and the whole team and all the people that I rode with on Friday, because that was an awesome experience. And actually it helped a lot with this budget conversation too. But just to the budget, lead pipes. Without
Yes.
that, you and I have talked about that multiple occasions. Just real quick, looking at the budget, moving forward, the lead service lines, it's a big problem in our community, not just in my district, but federal funding, state funding. What do you have that you could speak to that's guaranteed that's coming? That's a lot, but I feel like you could speak to that for everyone.
Sure, and I'll talk to the communications on that piece too, because that's one area I think we have done a really good job on. I was wearing out the TV screen, the radio screen, all that was set up through our comms folks, and the collateral we put together, the number of groups we brought together to talk about that, from everybody who are, some of our most vocal critics we brought to the table and said, please be a part of our team and help us to do that. So to your point, Councilwoman, saying, hey, how do we meet people where they are in this? And then, then the mailings and all that stuff. So I think there's some bright spots here for the things that we've done. And, I'll put us up against anybody on that, because we are super aggressive on lead service lines, and intentionally so. All right, so you saw in our budget here, we have about $8.5 million allocated to lead service lines. That's a pretty big uptick from where we have been. I just want to state again, the EPA order says that we have to get the lead service lines out in the next 10 years. I don't know what will happen after January, whatever the inauguration, but that's where we are today. They've also said we have to just do the public side, which is from the main in the street to the meter. What we've talked about here, and what we are committed to, is helping as many people do the private side as we can, especially people who are age and income qualified, because we know not everybody's going to be able to afford to get their lead service line replaced. So we have a lot of work to do there. We have a lot of unknowns. We have to go back and test everybody's to make sure we know what it is and tell them what it is. Then we have to replace all of the ones on the public side over the next 10 years. That's what that $8.5 million is going to help us do. On the private side, the federal government has allocated money through the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund at the state. The state has $250 million for this purpose. That was our share of, you've heard the $15 billion that the federal government allocated for this. That was Tennessee's share, was $250 million. We have made an application to the state for $100 million of that. Yes, it's almost half of what the state is asking for. And I won't be shy about it, because that won't meet all of our needs, but we can use that money to do both public and private side. So that's going to help us help some customers on the private side. Today, I have $5 million in our account that we can use on the private side because that was ARPA money, and the ARPA money can be used on the private side. So we're going to use that with this pilot going forward. This is going to get us started. It's not going to be enough to get the whole thing done, but that's
So
what we know about right now.
$8 million's in the book today.
$8
that we
million every
see, but
year is in
we
the
know-
budget for
yeah.
lead service lines.
But we know there's an ask coming for 100.
Plus, we're asking for 10 million for each of the next 10 years from the state, from that drinking water revolving loan fund.
Okay.
Plus, we just applied for a $10 million grant from EPA, plus 5 million of ARPA money. Again, that's going to get us started. We need to start seeking more funding. This year is one of, we know how to do public side. We're going to just keep on doing that. We need to figure out how to do the private side. And the best part of that is that our team came up with a plan that says MLGW crews don't need to be doing that. Let's hire local companies who can hire Memphians to do this work. Let's let them grow their businesses. We're going to be doing this for 10 years. So why not, if you're a small plumbing company, hire a bunch of extra crews to work with us on this? And we think that's a recipe for success. And we think that's going to be something that's really compelling, because we're growing businesses while we're doing good. So
Good deal.
that's the money we know about right now. I anticipate there will be more. If none of that comes to fruition after this year and we learn a lot, then we'll come back to you and say, how are we going to figure out how to get the rest? What measures should we do to make that happen? And it's not just a MLGW or a city council thing. It's going to need to be some more people helping us out with that.
All right, thank you, President McGowan. I'll save the rest of my comments for tomorrow. Well, you know what? I will say this. Please, we ultimately vote on the rates. Everybody's mentioned it. I might as well mention it as too. We vote on it. So, I'm counting on you to spend money wisely, operate efficiently like everybody else up here. Hopefully we don't have to do that. Empathy is a key word. It keeps coming up. I'll save the rest of this for tomorrow. Councilwoman Walker and Cooper Sutton. Councilwoman Walker, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that information about UConn. And is anyone after me?
Councilwoman Cooper.
Cooper, okay. Thank you for sharing the information about UConn. Yes, go Tigers. So I am a Fairleigh alumni, Fairleigh Bulldog, and this Friday we will be playing in the semifinals for the state championship right here in Memphis. We're going to be playing Milan High School at John P. Freeman Stadium this Friday. So get rested from eating all the turkey and everything and come on down to John P. Freeman this Friday, November 29th. That's at 7 p.m. Admission is $10. We're asking everyone to come out and support our young people, and we're all Black. So I'll save most of this until tomorrow. So I will speak to the communications. Ms. Madden, I was in a meeting earlier. I've had some constituents who've had some issues with solid waste, and it was my judgment that some of these issues boil down to communication. And so I had a wonderful meeting earlier after speaking with Solid Waste Director Philip Davis, and I suggested that he get with Communications Director Ms. Houston, and they came up with some things, and we met earlier, so maybe we can do the same thing and get with Ms. Houston and unpack some things and see what we can do with respect to communications with as it relates to the intersectionality of the city possibly supporting some things or supporting your initiatives on our communication side. And then also the extension on the bill. So for residents, if they're behind, they still have to, they pay the bill, and they can leave $199 balance, correct?
I think Mr. Davis is saying yes, depending on if you're a good pay customer, that number's higher. In other words, but if you've continually been behind, that number's $199. Yeah.
What is that number for commercial and residential for when they get
that
an
is-
extension? Because I've been a
that's-
commercial customer before, and I never got a cutoff when we were late. We just,
That's a residential number, unless, I don't think there is a level for commercial.
so commercial, they have commercial and industrial, they have longer to pay their bill, correct? When they're behind.
No. They just get cut off.
The 199.
So commercial and residential customers don't have the option of making payment arrangements.
All customers have the option to make payment arrangements. The 199, 399 referred to is unlike anything I've ever heard of in my career. So to my knowledge, the residential piece is solely endemic to Memphis. That is not provided for commercial customers, just residential.
So commercial and industrial customers don't get an extension. They can't get an extension.
All customers are allowed extensions and payment arrangements.
So that was my question. So the answer is yes.
All customers, yes, ma'am, are allowed payment arrangements.
And the
extensions.
amount for commercial and industrial is what? If it's not 199, what?
199, 399 only exists for residential customers. That does not apply to commercial or industrial customers.
So for commercial and industrial customers, what is the payment arrangement that they are allowed to make, or when they're getting an extension?
That would be specific to each customer based on the amount and the past that they've paid in the past.
But, and I know we're running close here, so but it has to be based on something, so we'll follow up later.
It's based on, as the president said, it's based on your previous demonstrated ability to pay.
But I'll just say one thing. So we're talking about two things. So the first is if you're a residential customer and your balance is below 199, you don't get cut off, whether you have a payment arrangement or not. The payment arrangement we're talking about here can be typically, some people will customize it and say, I just need 2 weeks to get it done. Some people say, I need 2 months. During COVID, we extended that out to 10 months so they could they'd be paying their monthly bill plus whatever the balance they had over the 10 months period of time. So it's flexible in that range, and our team works with them to find out what works for them. At the end of the day, we're trying to collect the revenue, because if we don't, then that impacts our ability to obviously keep rates affordable for everybody if people don't pay.
Okay, I'll finish following up tomorrow.
And I just have just two, and you can bring the answer to me tomorrow.
Okay.
Hey, that's a great question. That'd be great. And this has to do with Mr. Davis with customer service. How many positions were created in your area that was not budgeted for? Were there any positions? 6? Okay. And how many positions have been reclassified? I don't know who can answer that, but has been reclassified into a higher paying directory salary?
I don't know of any who have been reclassified.
Could you clarify that one more time now?
How many positions that has been reclassified but put into a higher director paying salary?
So when you say, what I'm hearing you say is, have we reclassified any positions to make them a director
A higher
positions?
paying director salary. Have
Yeah.
they been reclassified at your knowledge? Or you don't have to answer right now. You can go look and research that for me, but that would be better, because I don't want to guesstimate.
Sure.
I just want to know and just asking. And then one more thing, because I don't know if I'm gonna be here tomorrow or not, depends on what the husband says. The rate increase for this year, could I have a breakdown on what that looks like and what it's being used for?
Sure.
To make sure it hasn't been used for salary increase or anything like that. So I would like to have that. You can bring that tomorrow, or you can send that to me, but I would like to know what the dollar amount is, what we have gotten so far this year with that rate increase, and what is it going toward?
Sure.
And the usage of those funding, of those money.
Mhm.
Because this is the constituents, we're the one that's battling this, and so we want to know how it's being used. Accountability and oversight. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm done.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you, Councilwoman Logan. Thank you to everybody for taking the time. Go Fairleigh Bulldogs. Go Coach Hardaway. Go Tigers. We got questions more tomorrow.